Good
How's it
seeing you
going?
guys again. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right in. Marco, if you can get that first slide of the slide deck up. So Dylan, if you could just introduce yourself and what Green Rebates does for all of our growers out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my name is Dylan Collins. I'm the owner and founder of Green Rebates. At the end of the day, what we do is help get growers money to pay for equipment. And obviously we leverage rebate programs all over the country to do that. We've been doing it since they first, since they first became available. And it's a very complex and a varied arena when it comes to rebates. So we're just trying to make it easy and demystify it and help growers and suppliers as much as possible.
Awesome. All right, now Craig, I know you're a fixture in the lighting world. You've been around, and we all have been pretty excited about some of the new stuff that California LightWorks has been putting out for the last couple of years. If you can introduce yourself, please.
Sure. We founded California LightWorks back in 2008 when there was very little LED grow lights around, and nobody
fad back then.
Nobody believed in it, and it was an uphill battle. Obviously, we've come a long way, and rebates is an enormous part of that. So I look forward to diving into that a little deeper.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and do that. Let's dive into it. So one of the things that, I get a lot of questions about when it comes to like first builds or even upgrades in facilities is what equipment qualifies for rebates and how do I go about getting that? I mean, obviously we have the switch from HIDs, like high intensity discharge lights, like HPS or metal halides, to LEDs with the corresponding spectrums. Dylan, can you kind of talk about some of the other stuff other than lighting that might qualify for these types of energy rebates as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a plethora of other opportunities to get cash for your build for stuff that you might not even realize. So it's a long list to run through. And what you'll probably hear from me a lot is that it changes a lot depending on your utility and the program. But gotten rebates from everything from lighting to HVAC to dehumidifiers to IR film on greenhouses to heat curtains, underbench heating, boilers, pumps, fans, you name it. If it uses electricity or gas and it's efficient, there's a possibility that we can get money for it.
Oh, that's cool. So it's not even just the electrical equipment. It can also even apply to certain other powered equipment like heaters, boilers, things like that.
Absolutely.
Cool. I mean, I feel like a lot of people miss that when they look at the rebate side of like an upgrade of a building or a CapEx build. They only think like we got to get money off of the lights. But when a company like Green Rebates comes in, you kind of audit the entire plan, the entire facility to make sure that they're getting the maximum amount of rebates for every single piece of equipment they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so important for growers to work with experts and to work with companies like California LightWorks that really puts their interests first. I've said something several times that's gotten me a little bit of flack from certain companies, but I always say that you don't want to let your lighting company do your rebate. And the only reason I say that is because a lighting company knows about lights. They're only going to care about selling that light and getting you a rebate on that light. Whereas if you're working with California LightWorks, they'll bring us in. We're going to get you money for their lights, but we're also going to make sure that we go over every inch of your facility and get you money for those boilers and the heat curtains or the dehumidifiers or whatever else we can get money for.
And that's awesome. I mean, that's pretty cool that California LightWorks does that, because I'm sure they've been around so long that they know like that's not the lights aren't going to be the only expense. And if you guys could work kind of together in a group approach to make everything, qualify for rebates, it really softens the cost of the lights, and it really helps growers to kind of invest in the future rather than dumping all their money into, getting the facility up and running.
Absolutely. And the reality is that there's been scenarios where if the rebate for the lights isn't as significant as it is in other areas, that maybe we're not bridging the gap enough to make it possible for that grower to afford the upgrade.
Right.
But if we look at their other equipment that they didn't know they could get rebated as well, that they maybe already have or planning on spending money on, we can pull more money out of that to make it so they can pull the trigger on the lights.
That makes a lot of sense, and they can afford something kind of quality and not have to try to, you know, get some kind of unknown brand, unknown reputation type of a product, and they can stick with higher quality products like California LightWorks.
Absolutely.
So I see on this map here, most states, I don't know what's going on with you, Kentucky and North Dakota, but most states seem like they qualify for some sort of a rebate.
Yeah, the vast majority of utilities have programs, one kind or another. Again, they don't always include lights. They don't always include boilers, but they typically have some programs available. The caveat to that, and one of the challenging aspects of rebates is most states have many utilities. Some states have hundreds of utilities. Mm-hmm. And usually it's just the very small rural utilities or the city-run utilities that are less likely to have a program, but those are few and far between. Most major utilities have programs available.
And it makes sense, especially for cannabis growers, because you generally want to be growing in an environment or in a community that has kind of the population density to, you know, use your product without having to ship it all over the state. So that makes a lot of sense to focus on those kind of more metropolitan areas. One last thing on this slide, you guys have a custom portal that people can kind of monitor the progress of their rebates?
Yes, absolutely. It's a tool that we developed that has been very helpful and kind of just a benefit to the grower and the partner that we're working with, like California LightWorks or Growers House, where everyone involved can monitor the progress of the rebate. I think the element of the utility being involved, there can often be times where growers or suppliers kind of get a little antsy and like, what's going on with the rebate? Yeah. And that was the main reason we developed that. Is there are times when we're waiting for a response and it might seem like things aren't happening or we're not moving. And so we just wanted to be able to provide additional transparency and an easy avenue for growers and suppliers to check in or to, without having to call us and be like, hey, what's going on? And just to see the status and submit information and get updates easily, as opposed to feeling like they have to hassle someone all the time.
Yeah, and that's something that I've heard from growers and cultivation managers as they're trying to navigate this rebate space. If they haven't used a company like Green Rebates, then usually they're just like kind of wringing their hands the whole time, like, what's going on with the rebate? Are we going to get the rebate? So having something where they can kind of see the process in real time and get their updates in real time is kind of game changing, I feel.
Absolutely.
So this slide I want to kind of really dive into, because this is also one of the biggest questions that I get from cultivation managers, growers, people planning out the expenses for starting a cultivation, the timeline of events and the kind of the order of events when it comes to obtaining these rebates. So, I mean, on the first line right here, so the average project takes about 3 to 4 months. Is that generally going to be the case across the board for most of these utilities?
Yeah, it can vary pretty significantly. Okay. There are certain utilities that take quite a bit longer, but 3 to 4 months is certainly an average, and that's pretty much from the submission to the payout. It encompasses the entire process.
Cool. And so just going over some of these points here, obviously we got the info and layout that someone like California LightWorks or Cannon Cribs Consulting working with California LightWorks could do for people, where we get the layout of the facility, we get the layout of all the power using infrastructure, And in this case, I guess like even some of the gas or other utilities using infrastructure, and then this estimate creation, is that that's basically where you guys fall into play, right? With Green Rebates?
Yeah, that's where we're evaluating all the equipment that is being utilized and determining the potential for the rebate, and getting that information back to the growers and the suppliers so they can make an educated decision on whether or not to move forward.
Got it. And Craig, when you're making these like lighting layouts for people, you'll be able to get them all of the specs of like the amount of power being used and things like that, right?
Absolutely. It's all done on computer. We can try different fixtures, different hanging heights, different
Cool.
intensity levels to find that sweet spot where we're getting the maximum light with the fewest fixtures, which translate to the biggest possible rebates.
Oh, that's really cool that you mentioned that, because not a lot of people know it's not just the type of light, but it's how you hang it, where you hang it, the density of light. So it's cool to, I mean, you guys, I'm sure you guys model this all out for your clients as well.
Absolutely. Everything's done by computer. And like I say, it's great because you can try lots of different iterations, different fixtures, different intensity levels to find that sweet spot.
Awesome. Okay, so the design is made, the proposal is made, and the submission of this proposal to either the power company or whoever is issuing these rebates. Green Rebates is generally handling that, Dylan?
100%. Yeah, there's a lot that goes on in the background that people don't see, and for good reason, or realize is happening. Like your typical, it'd be difficult to guess how many phone calls and emails it takes with the utility to get a project from start to finish. And we take all of that off the table. We handle 100% of it. Like we're not talking about 3 calls, or we're talking about dozens of calls, dozens of emails for any given project. And growers don't have the time to deal with that, and they don't have the expertise. And there's a lot of potential pitfalls and just issues that can come up, not knowing what information is important or beneficial for them to provide to the utilities, or just simply knowing how to evaluate, like how to present the information. So we handle 100% of that, and we're very, very good at it.
That's nice, because I know it is a lot of legwork, and from past experiences, I've known growers that will try to do it themselves, and then it just kind of drops off because they either don't have the time, resources, or like you said, they don't know exactly the right questions to ask, and they don't know all of the opportunities out on the table. So they're kind of like leaving a lot of stuff not included in the potential of their rebates.
Absolutely. It's a very nuanced process, and it can be done by growers on their own. But, the analogy I've always drawn is it's like going to the IRS to do your taxes. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, you want that CPA. He's going to find that like line 35 that'll fix everything,
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys have submitted it. Then the pre-inspection happens. Is that pre-inspection done by like the utility company, or is that something you guys do?
Well, it's not always necessary, but when it is done, there's very typically a utility rep involved, and we're usually there as well for all of our customers that we're working with, just to make sure it goes smoothly. We help coordinate and schedule it. And it's really, the pre-inspection is a very simple, pain-free process, but it's something that we've helped avoid many times, because if we come and we're doing an audit already and we've already seen the facility, we have pictures, we can provide enough information to the utility where it's not even necessary.
Oh, that's really cool. So you can kind of like almost fast track the process because you're a trusted kind of rebate auditor. And so the utility companies will be like, okay, like they know what they're talking about. We can kind of move forward in the process. And so the next part of it would be like the installation of the infrastructure and even the lights themselves. Craig, I'm assuming you guys, when it comes to the installation and kind of the planning of the power layout and all that stuff, you guys could definitely walk clients through that process.
Our system is a little unique. Our Mega Drive system includes all the electrical wiring and a remote power supply. So we make all the cables. So we have to work with the electrician. We have to know all the measurements, and it's shipped, plug and play basically. All the electrician does is hook up a couple wires for each mega drive. All the other cables are provided. We've done the layout. They have a computerized plan. Unskilled labor can just plug in and hang the lights. So we have to do a lot more of that process than a normal LED fixture company.
That's
cool. And just to touch on the installation part of it, I would say that in the entire process, as far as the grower is concerned, that's probably the most important step in the entire process. What I think is probably the most common misstep that's made is missing the pre-approval requirement for a lot of programs. I can't tell you how many growers have contacted us and they already purchased, already ordered, have already had their product delivered and sometimes even installed. And they're coming in and saying, hey, I hear there's a rebate available to us. And sometimes that can eliminate them entirely if they've already got the lights up. So it's important to look into this as early as possible and to get us involved as early as possible, because if we're in line and working alongside the grower and the supplier, we can help avoid any potential risking the exclusion of the rebate due to installing or purchasing too early.
Yeah, and that kind of falls into what you said earlier about there could be other rebates for other equipment on the table too. So like it probably would make sense if there's any consideration of rebates, hit up the rebate, hit up you guys, basically Green Rebates or someone like that can understand the entire rebate landscape before purchasing any equipment. And then once you guys, work with a company like California LightWorks, then it kind of all holistically comes together and tries and becomes as efficient as possible.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so we got everything installed. Now we're basically at the home stretch here. The post-inspection and then the final improvement and then payment. How does that kind of play out after the install goes? Are you guys basically just running it across the finish line for these cultivators?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's still a very important part of the process. And it's a very beneficial part of the process for our partners and companies like Growers House and California LightWorks, because obviously you guys are still going to provide service and support to your growers, but that half of the process is very critical, and it's not something that you guys need to be worried about or the grower needs to be worried about if someone like us is handling it. And we follow through, we work with the growers and support them to payment, all the way to payment and beyond. And so that post-inspection, almost every program requires it. We help schedule that and attend that with the growers whenever possible. And that is the critical last step to getting that that final approval and getting it into payment processing.
Got it. And I have this question from growers a lot. Buying a lot of these lights can be kind of daunting when it comes to the cost. When it comes to like getting the estimate, and then the estimates at the beginning of the process and the payments at the end, but does Green Rebates offer a program or a system to do kind of the assistance in paying for these upfront costs for the lights before the install?
Yes, absolutely. If it's of benefit to the grower, we look at every project case by case, but we do offer upfront rebates or financial assistance in basically providing that rebate up front so that the growers can pay the after rebate cost instead of having to come up with $500,000 or $1 million for lights that they probably or may not have. Right. And so there's been many scenarios where, in fact, we're just finishing up a project in Michigan right now where the guy called us and he's like, hey man, my neighbor told me about you guys. We're trying to finally make the switch to LEDs, but we have not a lot of money. We've got 8 grow rooms. all we can afford. We got like 50 grand to do the bedroom right now. And I heard we can get that money back from the rebates, but we want to see if you can help us do that. And so I dug in a little more. I spoke to them a little longer, and I found out that they wanted to get the LED conversion done as quickly as possible. And we ended up doing his entire facility at once instead of just the one bedroom, because we could provide that upfront capital. That is
huge. If there's one big thing to take away, I feel, if you're starting a facility, it's that if you work with a company like yours, you're not that upfront cost, you can plan ahead and then pay it back even before you actually buy the lights. So now, speaking of lights, I'm pretty glad to have you on here, Craig, because you're kind of an expert in all this stuff. So California LightWorks, we've been working as Growers House. We've been working with you guys forever. I remember these small multi-spectrum LED fixtures, all the way to the new stuff that you guys have, like the Mega Drive. Like, you guys basically service everyone, right? Not just the cannabis space, but in all of horticulture.
No, absolutely. Obviously, cannabis has always been our bread and butter because it needs a lot of lights and much more than any other crop. But now we do a lot in tomatoes and lettuce and vertical farming and R&D, university research, greenhouses and grow rooms. So we're kind of all over the place. We're a little bit unique because we're a true manufacturer. We're vertically integrated, meaning we do all our own engineering, all our own prototyping and design, obviously all our own manufacturing. We're one of the few, we actually make our own drivers, and we have from the beginning. Almost everybody else is sourcing drivers outside. And that's the big failure point. Even the biggest companies have had major failures when they're using outside third-party drivers. So that makes us a little unique. And we can even, when it comes to rebates, we can even design a fixture towards a certain rebate if we know it has to have certain parameters. Pretty easy for us to design, custom spectrum, custom diodes. So we have a real advantage there, and it's saved people a lot of money over the years.
And that's really cool that you guys do all that stuff in-house, because there's so many times where I've seen like 3 different types of lights, and you kind of look at them sideways and you go, I feel like all of these came out of the same factory in Shenzhen. Like, what is happening right now? They have like small cosmetic changes to the ballast. So the fact that you guys are like vertically integrated probably allows you guys to give such a great price to the growers. And one thing too that I've noticed about your guys' new stuff especially is the amount of focus you guys are doing on efficiency. And that plays into like all of the rebates and stuff, I'd imagine, as well.
Well, I kind of wanted to touch on that. Obviously, rebates have driven the adoption of LEDs in general. I mean, it all started in commercial lighting. And in commercial lighting, the difference between LEDs and incandescent fluorescent was huge. So it was a very big difference, which the utility companies were very motivated to push people into that as soon as possible. Right. And, and on that note, all public utilities are mandated by the state, by some state public utilities commission. They get a monopoly to supply power in a certain area, but they have to service their customers. They have to offer power regardless, for a business, for a home. And in most cases, the grid is full. There's no extra power out there. So for them to service a new major grow room, putting in new power lines and expanding the grid is horrendously expensive. Takes a long time, but they're mandated to do it. So it's much cheaper for them to steer people into more efficient solutions, even pay them to do it, rather than have to put in that extra grid. But it's their job. It's their job to keep that monopoly. So we shouldn't be shy about pushing these rebates. And a lot of times the utilities are not the most motivated to get these done, right? They're forced to. That's why you have to have an advocate like Green Rebates, who understands the game, who can keep the pressure up, who can give them the right information up front so you don't lose time. I can't tell you how critical that is. But as far as LED grow lights, it lagged behind commercial lighting because when we first started, they had single-ended HPS bulbs, right? And they were about 0.9 micromoles per joule. And in grow lights, a lot of people probably know that, but maybe some don't. Commercial lighting, they always use lumens per watt. Mm-hmm. We use a different measure in horticulture. It's called micromoles per joule, and it's basically how many photons do you get in a second for how many watt seconds. So it's a much more efficient measure, and it's always expressed in a fixed number. So, they were well under 1.0. Fluorescent and incandescent was like 0.5, and LEDs were already about, 0.1, something like that. Mm-hmm. But when we started, single-ended HPS were kind of at 0.12. So LEDs didn't have a huge advantage. So the rebate game wasn't as lucrative as it became later. And then slowly LEDs became more efficient. We got up to like 1.5, and we were going, oh, great, we're 1.5, they're at 0.9. Then they came out with double-ender HPS, which were way more efficient. Now they got up to 1.5, even as much as 1.9, which kind of set us back again and made the rebate calculation more difficult. But since then, and that's what, if you go back to that chart, the previous chart, here you see the curve, the efficiency of LEDs compared to HPS over the long term. And you see that red line. There was a point where they kind of crossed, where they were equally efficient. Now LEDs are pushing well over 3.0, and HPS is still at 1.9, and that's where it's always going to be. It's not going to get any more efficient. Right. We're pushing with our lights now, we're pushing 4.0. So basically you're getting twice the light for the same amount of power. And this is what motivates the utility company. They've just saved half of that amount of power by paying you to put in LEDs. And then the chart on the right shows the cost per micromole, which over time, originally we were like 5 times more expensive than HPS. Yeah. These days they're getting real close. When you factor in the bulbs, et cetera, we're getting really on a cost per micromole level. We're getting very close. So there's really no reason to hang on to those legacy bulbs, especially if you can get a rebate. You go to the next slide. So, like I say, everything's based on micromoles per joule, and they had to set up a system for horticulture. How do you actually qualify how efficient a fixture is? Because every manufacturer can put out their own information. It's usually PPF, which that's the total light output of fixture, divided by the wattage, and that gives you a number. And that equates to micromoles per joule, more or less. But as we all know, manufacturers can exaggerate. So you don't know if it's true. So they created the Design Light Consortium, which is an independent agency to evaluate lights and approve them and give the actual micromole per joule level. That's called DLC. So anybody can look up the DLC website. You sign in an account, it's free. It allows you to access all the lights that have been tested and approved. These are tested by third-party laboratories. Then they will give you every approved fixture. It lists their micromoles per joule, which is generally the basis for how much of a rebate you can get. Yeah. I've shown a couple examples here. If you look up on DLC here, you look up our MDL 400, for example, or our MDV 600. It shows you how much of the light is in each spectrum. It shows you how much in red, how much in green, how much in far red. More importantly, it shows you the verified micromoles per joule. That's what's circled in that red box. The first one is at the DC level. That's the LED diodes themselves. And then the second one is the AC, which is the actual fixture rating. So the fixture rating is, of course, what they use. What's the actual efficiency of this light from the fixture? So that's the Bible. And most rebates are based on this. Most rebates you can't even get it if you're not listed here. So this is a very valuable resource. We have some of the highest efficiency rated fixtures in the industry. And this is changing all the time as LEDs get more efficient. So go to the next slide. So one other thing I wanted to mention that people often overlook is that you can get rebates on controls, lighting controls.
Yeah.
A lot.
It uses power. Makes sense. Yeah.
Well, and some of them have very lucrative benefits for controls, and the controls may not cost you that much, because controls, number one, you can use a timer to go off peak. The utilities, if they can get you to use that power when they don't have stress on the grid, there are rebates available. In a greenhouse, if you can tie your lights to a photo sensor, so you're not lighting too much when there's plenty of sun, you can get rebates for that. Also, different spectrum have different efficiencies.
Right.
Red is by far the most efficient spectrum. The more red you have in the fixture, the higher that micromole per joule level goes up. Whites and blues are much lower. So that's another factor that you can use controls. Like in a greenhouse, you can go all red when you don't need that white. You might want that white because you can see the plants. It's easier on your eyes. But controls can allow you to focus on that red channel. Some rebates will give you very interesting rebates for that controllability. So
that's cool. Dylan, you've worked with rebates where like the controls will actually garner additional rebates as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, every program is different and every program treats controls differently. But we've definitely made the case on many, many projects where implementing a control system and California LightWorks has options for greenhouses that involve photosensors and automatic dimming. So if we show the calculations on the savings from the lights automatically dimming when it's brighter outside, then that can definitely increase the rebate.
Yeah, Craig, I saw the install over at Earth's Healing at Tucson where we showed the video earlier in this webinar, and it looks really cool. It looks kind of like very efficient also on how they're set up. And one thing that I noticed is usually when you go into a greenhouse supplemental lighting, it's just like a spider's web of conduit and junction boxes and outlets and stuff. And this mega drive system that he has in there, I saw the bank of ballast. It is pretty impressive how much more efficient the install is, which is going to save you a ton more money on infrastructure. Can't really get a rebate on EMT, but you don't have to buy it if you use a system like Mega Drive.
If you go to the next slide, here's where if that I don't know if you could show the video, Marco.
Yeah, let's this is a cool system.
So here's kind of the Mega Drive concept. The power supply, the drivers, you could put it as much as 1,000 feet away from the grow room. So it can be outside in a hallway, in a greenhouse, in an electrical room, whatever. And then there are no plugs or conduit or any type of normal electrical wiring in the grow room itself. We supply all the cables. It's all pre-cut, all pre-measured to install everything. This eliminates heat from the grow room, gives you much better protection for humidity. It's very flexible to move around. The electrician doesn't even need to go into the grow room at all. He just connects the box to wherever your power supply is. So, and we also can control, here's our vertical series, same idea.
This is awesome, yeah.
For greenhouse, for high bay, warehouse, no wiring inside, no drivers. And the drivers, they fail because of heat. So in a greenhouse, if you have those drivers sitting under the sun in the hardest part of the greenhouse, it shortens their lifespan, by a factor of 2 or 3. If our drivers are air cooled, you can put them in a nice environment. The lifespan is much longer, much more resistant to water. So all around, much less expensive, much more durable. Then the last thing I wanted to mention is just to give some examples of the types of rebates. I think if you go down.
This slide right here.
Yeah, so just some random examples. Obviously it's changing all the time. Sometimes it's real generous and then the next year it disappears. So you've got to work with a specialist like Green Rebates, who they're up on it. And they generally hear about the new programs first, about the new budgets first, and it can let you know right away. So, for example, we did one with Dylan in Oregon where they actually got, I think, more than the value of the lights. So they actually made money. and we did 3 or 4 greenhouses, replaced all their HPS. The amount they paid was ridiculously small. And then there's another example, for example, in Michigan, where indoor projects have been 50-60% rebated. These have been mostly based on the percentage of savings. There again, comparing a 1,000-watt HPS to an LED on a micromole per joule basis. Generally, where we are now, you maximize the rebate when you replace a 1,000-watt HPS with a 600-watt LED.
Right.
There's where you get the maximum amount if they're on a sliding scale for efficiency level. On the other hand, a lot of rebates will be a fixed amount per fixture. For instance, in Canada and Ontario, it's a flat $200 per HPS fixture that you replace, regardless of what you replace it with. Then they just launched one in California in the last week, where it's a state mandated program. So all the utilities are now implementing this, and it's $79 per LED fixture, regardless of what LED fixture it is or how powerful it is. And that can be replacing an HPS or a brand new facility. So it's a flat $79 per fixture, very easy to qualify. The only thing is that it's only available till the end of the year. So you have to have the fixtures invoiced before the end of the year, but otherwise it's gravy. So anyway, those are just some rough, you got to work with Dylan to figure out the different approaches and what's coming up and what's dying. But it's definitely a good combination. Work with a LED factory that can kind of design to the rebate, work with Green Rebates or a specialist like that who can get you the most bang for your buck. And then obviously working with Growers House, you can bring in other pieces of equipment, dehumidifiers, HVAC, et cetera, and put the whole package together.
That's awesome. And you bring up a good point. A lot of these rebates have these kind of optimized windows where you get the most rebate, and then they kind of change the rebate structure. So you might not be able to get a better amount of rebate later on. So this kind of works hand in hand with working with Green Rebates. They can provide you a little bit of assistance in purchasing and making the invoices for these things during that window so that you can maximize your rebates and kind of have Green Rebates walk the entire process through. So it's kind of like a really nice turnkey rebate power equipment solution for growers, cultivators, and people starting facilities.
Absolutely. And Green Rebates can actually tell us, here's where you can maximize the rebate. And we can design that system to that goal.
Oh, awesome. You know, I have a couple of quick questions about the Mega Drive system before we move off of that. Now, this channel, this 2-channel spectrum control, so the MD, the 400s, I believe, and the 600s can change spectrum according to the controls?
All of the Mega Drive are 2-channel with 0 to 100% dimming on either channel. And this was developed especially for cannabis, where you might want a different spectrum in veg than you do in flower.
Right.
A lot of people like to go to a different spectrum in final finishing, back off the red, ramp up the blues. People like to have a higher blue to red ratio in veg. You like to really maximize the red in flower. So that's all programmable according to your cycle. Also in greenhouse, like I say, red is much more efficient than white or blue. So you want to maximize those reds for supplemental lighting, but you also like to have that white channel available when you're working in there where you want to see the true colors of the plants.
Awesome. So that video that we showed, I would like for us to be able to put that in some of the, maybe in the handouts or something, because I think it's really cool to see how clean the install is. Like, I've been in so many facilities where, like I said, it's just like a spider's web of conduit and junction boxes. And, you know, I've worked a little bit in construction. I know those materials are not cheap, and they're not getting any cheaper. So by eliminating all of that, just hanging the fixture with the LEDs and having the ballasts outside of the room where they don't have to increase your HVAC load in the room, I think it's a game changer when it comes to this horticultural lighting.
Well, we did a project a few weeks ago in Northern California for a large lettuce grower, and he had already done one bay with a competitor's lights, and we are fortunate enough to get the next bay. His cost of installation on the first bay equaled the cost of the fixtures. In our bay, the installation cost was 10% of the fixture cost. So it's dramatic.
That is awesome. So yeah, if you're starting a new facility, if you're looking for a lighting solution, we always try to nudge people over to something like a Mega Drive system, where it's just so much more efficient on the install, on the infrastructure of the building. And I'm sure with less cable run, it even makes the power usage more efficient throughout the entirety of the grow.
Absolutely. And the whole control system and the way the drivers work, you gain a lot in efficiency and rebates.
Awesome. All right. Well, to just bring it all together here. So we have companies like ours, Growers House Ag Solutions, where we can provide you like the HVAC. We can be a liaison to getting California LightWorks lights or dehues, all of that other stuff. We have companies like Green Rebates that have a deep knowledge of all of the options and kind of things on the table for rebates. And then we have you guys, Craig, over at California LightWorks that can provide the layout, provide even custom solutions to lights, which is awesome for maximizing your rebates. And it all kind of comes together. So like if someone wanted to say they're starting a facility in like New York or New Jersey, what's kind of the first step that you would recommend, Dylan, that they do to start utilizing these rebates? Like reach out to you or Growers House?
Yeah, absolutely. Either or. But I would say the most important thing is getting us involved as early as possible, because it can come down to, in certain cases, just weighing two different options, and one has a rebate and one doesn't. And if we get involved early on, we are a lot more capable of making sure that the rebate process doesn't cause any delays. And it's just good business. It allows you to understand and plan for the CapEx and the build out with all of the information, knowing if and when you'll get a rebate and all of that. And the earlier we get involved, the easier it is to make minor changes that might make a big impact on your overall rebate.
That makes sense. And of course, with the layout and design, you know, a lot of guys kind of think they know like the most efficient way to do a lighting layout. But again, with new technology like the Mega Drive, it's probably best to, as soon as someone has like a grow space in mind, to contact like California LightWorks and get that layout first, so that they're not spending all this money on material that they may not even need.
Absolutely.
Craig, when it comes to doing the design, like you guys will basically get all of the grow room specifications from the grower and kind of work with them holistically to plan out like the amount of light they need, the amount of fixtures, which fixtures work best in that scenario?
Yeah, well, cannabis is pretty straightforward because we've been doing it so long. Yeah. We've seen so many different variations. And obviously, it involves how high is your ceiling, what type of benching are you using. That could change the lighting decision. You know, what's your power limitations, all those kind of things we need to consider. You might be limited against, you know, you might say, oh, this is the ultimate solution, but you might have power or ceiling height limitations, et cetera. But that's pretty straightforward. Crops outside of cannabis, a little bit more complex. Obviously, each crop is different. Each greenhouse is different. You know, the way they're, same thing, the gutter height, you know, their layout, that you have to know their average DLI light over the year.
Right.
In their particular area. So it's a bit more complex. Indoor cannabis, pretty straightforward. Well, just need to know, you know, how much ceiling height, how much power, what is your real target light levels.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure there's like 1,000 more little nuances of this topic that we can cover, but I think the important thing to really drive home to people is, if you are looking to, you know, build a facility or take advantage of any of these rebates, time is of the essence. You really want to reach out to a company like Green Rebates, California LightWorks, and Growers House Ag to plan this whole process out. And then once you've planned through, a company like Green Rebates can kind of just, you know, drive it home as the process continues.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk to utilities every day. So we're very often the first people to know about changes or deadlines or funding levels in certain areas. We've already had a couple states this year that have fallen off of or have run out of funding for their programs. And so nothing's going to be able to be done for anyone else until next year at the earliest. And like when customers are working with us, we know exactly when that's happening. We have a bunch of customers that we got in ahead of the deadlines before the funds were cut off.
Awesome.
Whereas if you were trying to navigate it on your own, there's a very good chance that you wouldn't be aware of that and might miss out on your opportunity to do something this year or get money at all. And we have, you know, what it comes down to really for us, what makes us as successful as we are and as good rebates as we are is really relationships and our network. Being around the industry as long as we've been, having relationships with utilities and their reps. And oftentimes we'll get text messages, we'll get calls as soon as there's an update internally before the utility is publishing anything online or sending out email blasts. So it's really a big part of what we do, keeping our customers, our growers, our partners informed and making sure that we're taking advantage of expiring opportunities and also new opportunities. Sometimes there's bonuses and you can actually get more money at certain times.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're definitely, I mean, we can go on and on, but we got some questions here, Marco. We are going to do some Q&As. The first one was from Brian. It was great to see programs to help growers like financial assistance and rebates. How long does a rebate process take after the purchase? I mean, that's kind of like all holistically aligned with your guys' rebate package, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it varies a lot. Sometimes like once you get the lights installed and the post-inspection done, payment can be processed in 2 weeks, but oftentimes it's more 4 to 8 weeks before payment's received. Okay. It can be a long time and there can be hiccups on that path as well. And we help smooth that out and make sure things move as quickly as possible. On top of that, if we're helping provide the upfront rebate, then it kind of eliminates that issue for growers altogether. And you just know that you're in good hands and that we're going to help see the process all the way through to make sure there's no unexpected challenges in actually receiving that payment, because it does happen.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Okay, cool. So like, again, it goes back to utilizing a company like Green Rebates to really kind of like guide the process and provide additional financial assistance if needed to push the process forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, is there a fee involved with the rebate process or the financing?
Yeah, there is. Yes and no, I would say. It's interesting. So obviously we have a large team of very experienced people helping make all the magic happen. So that comes at a cost. However, our average, when we evaluate rebates and projects that we get involved with, we found that our customers typically, and I would argue this is on the low end, get an average of 20 to 25% more from their rebate than if they had done it themselves, which is a lot higher than any fees that we would be charging. So I'm confident. Our goal is always to add value to any project. If we cannot add value, we don't need to be involved. But we firmly believe, and it's always our goal, to put more money in the growers' pockets at the end of the day. So they're better off financially working with us than they are trying to navigate it without us, regardless of any fees, because we're going to get them a return that's much greater than it would be without us and our fee.
That makes sense. It's kind of like the old CPA thing. He's going to find you, 30% savings on your taxes, but his fee is only like 10% of that. So you're already winning out no matter what.
Absolutely.
So retroactive rebates. I know this is a big question now too, because people have, like you said, sometimes they already purchased their equipment. Sometimes they've already installed everything and they want to know if they still qualify for rebates. How do retroactive rebates work?
Yeah, so retroactive rebates are a thing. And it's, again, as with any program, it depends on the utility. But in certain areas, in certain utilities, you can get rebates on equipment that's already installed and purchased.
Awesome.
California has some opportunities available for that, Michigan, and many other places. So the best thing to do, if you haven't talked to a company like ours, call one, even if it's not us. Like at the end of the day, there's probably money on the table. We're going to get you more money than anybody else can, but you never know until you talk to an expert.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. We just got a new question in from Tanya, I believe. This goes back into your costs. It is how much are the costs for your service to help? Is it a percentage of what you save? Is it a percentage or is it more of a flat fee? Because I know it's like so different.
It's a percentage. It's
Okay.
a percentage of the incentive that we're able to get for you guys. And as far, arguably, I know it sounds like lip service or whatever, but there really is no cost to the grower because we don't take any money if we don't get you money. Our money comes out of the rebate itself. Our standard fee is 15%. And like I said, the vast majority of our projects, we're adding far more than 15% to the value of the rebate. And it doesn't come out of the grower's pocket. We might be putting a lot of that money up front, so it's reducing their CapEx immediately. But at the end of the day, all that money comes from the utility.
That makes sense. So it's not like, they have to cut you a check. It's more of like once the process is complete, then it's just a portion of the rebate that, but they've already won out on an additional percentage of what they would get in a normal rebate if they just did just the lights or something. So it kind of works out.
It also keeps our interests perfectly in line with not only the growers, but the suppliers as well. It's in our interest, it's in the growers' interest for us to get them as big a rebate as possible. And so the bigger rebate we get, the better it is for us, the better it is for the grower. That's
awesome. Yeah, it makes sense. It's kind of a holistic partnership on that front. Quick question. Do you ever work with state legislators to encourage utility rebates, to offer more and higher rebates? I mean, Craig, you mentioned earlier that it is in the best interest of these power utility companies to reduce the load, and offer these rebates for the reduction of load. But is there any work by either of your guys' companies to work with kind of municipality or state legislation to kind of push more of these rebates?
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually consulted and advised on multiple rebate programs, especially when it comes to horticulture, being that we're the most prominent and the kind of company on the forefront of horticultural rebates. We've helped establish and implement programs in various states. We are also there on the legislative side. Florida is a good example, where there's states that don't have strong programs but are going to be very relevant, having a lot of big roads coming on, where we're trying to do whatever we can to influence and help push new legislation or programs in those states and municipalities.
Got it. And when it comes to kind of like
Ohio.
yeah, you saw that Ohio. Can you come to Ohio? Well, we'll see. I'm sure you guys are touching that space anyway. And I guess
I feel it for you, Garrett. I feel for you, Garrett. Ohio is a very unique scenario. There was some fraudulent shenanigans in Ohio that led to them eliminating rebate programs across the board. There's one utility in Ohio that's still offering rebates, but they have been, for the most part, eliminated. And we're definitely hoping to do anything we can to help change that.
Awesome. And to include, like, if there needs to be a difference in fixture or a difference in efficiency, then a company like California LightWorks can make a custom solution working with Green Rebates to kind of find the best rebate solutions possible, even in those states that are kind of locking it down, because I know that's happening in a lot of states right now as well. All right, so I think that was all. I think we got all the questions. When we say home growers, is that in grow tents? It can be, or small rooms, things like that, Steve. So home growers is just basically a term that we use for people not growing in the commercial space, not as a fully licensed grower, but more of like the caregiver or personal grow site. All right.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. That was really informative. Got a lot of great questions answered. Probably a lot more to come. I'll share the contacts with everybody here so you guys can reach out, and I'll make sure that there's a follow-up email with this recording and a way for these folks to get in touch with us. So now it's the moment a lot of y'all have been waiting for. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask Craig if there was anything else you wanted to add to the end of the webinar right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a complex area. Feel free to email us or contact us with any detailed questions. If we can't answer it, we'll find out somebody who can.
Great.
And get on it.
I know we're short on time here, but I'd just like to say that it's an honor. I'm really excited to be here, especially with Growers House and California LightWorks. As Mike said earlier, they've been around forever. And that's not a small thing. You know, people in this industry often talk about legacy and legacy growers. And California LightWorks and Growers House are what I would call legacy brands, meaning they've been here since before rec, before legalization, and they're still owned and operated by the original founders. I remember the Max Shield days, and when I got my first legalized tomatoes shirt from Nate. You know. And it's important. I think that the important thing there is we all have a passion and a love for the industry. You know, I started growing for the first time. I learned how to grow on overgrow.com. I don't know if people even know what forums are these days, but back in the day, there wasn't a lot of information readily available. You had to find it wherever you could to learn how to do this yourself. And it's just something that's important to me and important to our company, that we care about what we're doing. We genuinely love going, meeting growers and seeing their facilities. It's exciting for us. And it changes the way that a company operates. And I think it's really important to their values and their integrity. And so being here with California LightWorks, with Growers House, two companies that I've known for a very long time, and I would say represent the best of the industry.
Awesome.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, great having you both, and we'll pass the love on to Nate. Well, great. Thank you all again for everything. Thank you, George, in the background. I'm sure you're watching. Troy, thank you for your help kind of arranging all this with us early on. Dylan, congratulations on your recent nuptials. I heard you just got engaged, married, and down in Mexico. So congratulations on that. And Craig, look forward to working with you guys, hopefully again on a future Canna Cribs episode. We have some more stuff we're pumping out this year in New Mexico in December. So stay tuned for all you Canna Cribs fans out there. We'll be getting some more content out early in the new year, but also have a couple that are still launching. In fact, a week from today, we're launching Culta, which will be one of the best episodes I've ever directed and been a part of. So that'll be exciting. So anyway, stay in touch, everybody. You know how to get a hold of us, and we'll hopefully see you all on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Craig.
Have a great one.
All right. Thank you, everybody.